Hello, hello. I am Karen Jean-François.
And I'm Cecilia.
And this is the Women in Data podcast.
Every other week, we bring you conversations with inspiring women who are shaping the world of data.
We dive into stories, explore challenges, and share insights and learning to help you navigate your own career in this exciting field.
And sometimes it's just the two of us, candidly chatting about our experience or topics we're curious about. Let's get straight to it. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Data podcast. I'm your host, Cecilia, and if you've been feeling like the world of work is shifting under your feet a little, well, you're definitely not alone. There's been quite a lot of change lately. Conversations that felt loud a year or two ago have gone quieter. Things like fairness, access, and support are still important, but they're being talked differently or sometimes not talked about at all. But there is one thing, women in the data field is still growing, still making an impact, and still showing up for each other in very powerful ways. And today's episode's about that. So I'm joined today by Jo Portlock, who leads people, culture, and belonging at LexisNexis. Jo has this incredible way of bringing warmth, wisdom, and practical advice to some of the trickier conversations we're having at work right now. We're going to talk about why communities like Women in Data matter more than ever, what it really takes to thrive in uncertain times, and how we can be more intentional, whether if it's mentorship, support, or simply by showing up for each other. So if you're looking for some clarity, some encouragement, and maybe a few light bulb moments, this is the right place to be. Jo, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Can I ask you to start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Jo Portlock. As you said, I'm VP of People, Culture and Belonging. So what does that mean? It encompasses all our diversity and inclusion work alongside our volunteering, CSR, sustainability, wellbeing and early careers approach. So I like to think these are all the things that really define our culture at LexisNexis Risk Solutions, which I've had the pleasure of working there for 12 years. Outside of work, I'm a mother. I like to be outside in nature. I'm neurodivergent or neurosparkly, as I sometimes prefer to describe it. And obviously what brings me here today is I'm absolutely passionate about inclusion.
Fabulous. I love that you showed also the other side, not just the work, but everything else that comes with it. And that's fabulous. But we are hearing a lot about fairness in conversations about work, leadership, and opportunity. But what exactly does that mean in today's workplace? I mean, and why is this becoming such a central part of the conversation?
Yeah, I think, as you said in the introduction, what we did call diversity and inclusion work has definitely been experiencing a lot of turbulence. We've seen rollbacks, we've seen commitments, targets going away or being quietly quitted. But I think where I have seen companies more effectively pivot, they talk about fairness. And the way I see it, I talk about fairness a lot in inclusion work because actually, number one, I always find that it's very hard to argue you don't believe in fairness. There's polls that say 3/4 of people naturally think fairness is a good thing and a good thing at work. So people typically feel gravitated towards the concept that fairness is a good thing and it's hard to argue with. But then the next layer is, well, what is fairness? Because I think where inclusion strategies really need to lean into is how do you create fairness in the workplace? It doesn't happen naturally. A lot of inclusion work is really trying to address historical, systemic barriers or equity barriers that people have existed. And they exist because the world of work was not designed for the working generation and the diversity of people in work today. It was designed in a very different way, in a way where we didn't have data. We didn't have a lot of technology. We typically managed through hierarchy, through systems of control. We worked in very defined processes. All of that's completely different now. And that's where understanding fairness, looking at data, looking at gaps in representation as an indicator of fairness, or potentially areas where you need to address fairness and understand why are we seeing differences? What are the barriers? And for me, equity, it requires you to lean in. You have to understand a world you'll never experience, right? Or barriers you will never experience, but it doesn't mean they're not there, and it doesn't mean they're not true. So that's really kind of why I actually think fairness is a good way to start conversations about inclusion.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also, you started mentioning true merit-based culture. This is also something that is really important. I mean, I guess the fairness comes with the true merit. Sustaining the fairness independent of the policy change is really important. So what happens when organization starts rolling back on those inclusive policies? I mean, I'm sure there's like a bunch of risks and setbacks and potential harm that can something might not be exactly the same in the
Yeah.
workplace, right?
Absolutely. I almost see the risk. The risk is twofold, right? So on this very basic level, D&I work, or fairness, equity, that is the way to mitigate against discrimination in the workplace. And it is very much legal to discriminate against people of any protected characteristic, and that remains constant. And actually, if you remove inclusion, diversity, education, and awareness, you run a much greater risk that there's going to be greater discrimination in the workplace. And I genuinely believe that's going to start. The consequence of that will start happening. You'll start to see discrimination cases, perhaps not this year, but maybe next year and beyond. The other risk is the other side. It's the business case, and it's the well-being case for inclusion. So if you don't have fairness, inclusion, equity in your workplace, firstly, you're going to miss a huge amount of talent because you're not going to be fully inclusive. You're going to miss the ability to innovate because we truly need inclusive cultures of psychological safety where people can share their best ideas and feel valued. You'll probably start to see retention risks. And then the other one, which I'm really passionate about, and I don't think it gets talked enough about in inclusion, it's well-being, right? If you constantly have to mask, if you constantly have to battle barriers, if you can't be yourself, the price you pay is your mental health and ultimately stress and burnout, right?
Mm-hmm.
And actually, in a world of hybrid working and in a world where we have more options and choices, we are more aware of our mental health, our physical health, and our well-being. That's a real risk that organizations are going to take if they don't lean into the importance of inclusion.
It's very reassuring to hear someone from people perspective to be so concerned about the well-being of people. I mean, we've all had some kind of experience of not feeling well in their workplace. So it's really reassuring to hear that from the other side. But what do you think could be something to help then people or women in the data field, women in general, just not just survive, but thrive in those uncertain times? Do you have perhaps any growth tips, either professional or personal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I still think push your company. If it feels like your company is rolling back on commitments, I think there's a good way to get traction. You can ask questions, right? It doesn't have to be forceful. It doesn't have to be aggressive, but you can ask those questions. Say, what are we doing around our commitment to inclusion? How are we supporting the next generation? So I'd firstly say, whatever avenue works in your company, make some noise about it in a positive, supportive way, but absolutely keep that focus on it, because it makes it harder for companies to roll back on their commitments, particularly if you're in the UK and you have the gender pay gap reporting, right? That's a public document you can really look at.
Right.
So I think that's important. I think if you are a woman navigating the world of tech, not for all, but, I don't want to speak for all women, but I'll just share the observations and adjacencies. The majority of women will be in a minority group, right? It is not common for women to work in data and be the majority. It is far more common that you will be the only or the one of few. And what research will tell you is if you are the only or the one of few, you tend to be very conforming. It is easier, whether you're aware of it or not, to sit back, to not speak out, to go along with the consensus view. Now, it's for companies to address the balance and for the industry. So please pay it forward, mentor somebody new into the industry so the representation isn't something that's always going to be in the minority. But equally, if you are navigating the space where you are the only in the room or you're the one of few, find the wider community. That's where this space is so important. Find a mentor, absolutely, or a buddy, or whatever you want to define it as, somebody who can be your support. Build your network. It is much harder for women typically to have big networks because we still do 75% of childcare and we have a much more integrated home work-life dynamic. But where you can, invest in yourself and your network. And of course, the most important thing that I think sometimes really holds women's careers back is having that sponsorship within the business. The sponsors are the ones, they're going to talk about you when you're not in the room. They're really the ones that are going to accelerate your career. So a mentor will help you along the way, will give you the wise words of wisdom from their own experience. But a sponsor is really going to be the thing that's really going to elevate your career, who's going to truly advocate for you, talk about you when you're not in the room, give you the opportunities and platforms, whether it's projects, comments, whether it's a speaking engagement, whether it's going on a training course. Really, really sit back and reflect and think, who is that person or those people? And if you're not sure, how do you sort of manage your personal brand upwards to ensure you do have sponsors in the business who are really going to advocate for you and your career?
Yeah, I think those are great tips. I mean, starting with just asking the question, just have a conversation. You can start, why not? Why wouldn't you? And then, as you said, yeah, whenever you, not just in data, in tech in general, it's mostly male-led, but, bringing more people to the table, paying it forward, I think that's so important. And then finding your wider community, if it is women in data or whatever other community it is that you can find, and then having a sponsorship within the business, that someone to talk about you, and even if you're not sitting at the table, that is exactly that. And as the workplace is evolving, what do you think that the next version of the workplace is going to look like?
That's a really interesting question, isn't it? As we're sort of a number of years into the evolution of AI in particular, right? I think that is well, firstly, COVID was the big change agent because it suddenly enabled us to work in a really hybrid way, in a way that, we never would have thought was possible. And so that was a good leveler in many respects. It was a good, I think, flexibility. I'm a believer in the true hybrid, but flexibility is only a good thing for women, but actually for people of all genders, as we all want balance in our life. I think it feels like AI is definitely the next thing that is really going to impact how we work. And if I'm honest, I don't know the answer. None of us really do, but I hear lots of different opinions. I think where I naturally gravitate towards is AI will work alongside us. I think as many people listening will know, there is bias in AI, right? I mean, I've just experienced it just on very simple ChatGPT functionality and asking for certain things. I can see the bias, which typically tends to be gendered, but I also see ethnicity bias. But I think AI will work alongside us. I think it will enable productivity for us because hopefully it reduces some of the mundane tasks. But I think what's important is we can't lose our humanity within that. So people talk a lot about the human-centric workplace, the need for human skills, which is great because it's absolutely what inclusion's all about. Our skills of empathy, our skills of authenticity, creating psychological safety and trust, supporting people's well-being, noticing kind of how well-being really aligns to our cognitive brain power and functioning, and how we'll create that real balance in the workplace where humans are really doing the human stuff and AI is doing the more machine logical or routine tasks for us. So that's where I think I'm not going to go full on, there won't be any jobs anymore. I think I will kind of, as always, gravitate towards the center and the pragmatic approach. I
agree. There's been a total shift with COVID, and I am a pure result of that. I was working in hotels and now I'm working for universities and working completely remotely. I think is absolutely fantastic. I love how the workplace has shifted since. But yeah, I think AI will enable some kind of productivity. There will be interesting to see where we're going to go with that. But I think absolutely it's important to have a bit of humanity and empathy in this. And I think also, I feel that sometimes people think that AI is such a black box and you can't really see inside. And maybe having a bit of transparency is going to be necessary. So also bringing back, how the data can hold perhaps organizations a little bit accountable and seeing where the trends are going, making sure that we're not backsliding somehow or going the wrong direction.
I agree. And I like with myself and how I use AI and Copilot and these things, I think you have to have your choice. It shouldn't just be defaulted. So I personally don't like the sort of meeting notes summary aspect to something like a Copilot, because I know myself to really listen and engage with people, I can't have that because I can't relax and go, oh, it's fine. Like the meeting notes will be summarized. I feel for my own attention, engagement, authenticity, I have to lean in. So I don't want to use it for that. Similarly, I was looking at some of our diversity data the other day. I'm sure there was an AI solution. I might look like a sort of tech Luddite, but I really enjoyed delving in, sort of putting different things together, looking at some differences, checking my own work. And I felt like sort of going a bit grassroots up with some of that data just helped me understand it a bit better, right? It made me a bit more curious. Whereas there's probably a reality I could have just typed in, what's this and what's this, and it would have come up with the answer. But I think, I enjoyed the problem solving element of it. And I think it deepened my understanding of what I was seeing, what I was noticing, some of the causation correlation. So I don't think we should just default that AI can do all these things for us. Otherwise, what are we bringing to the party as human beings?
Right. No, absolutely. I think I know that sometimes when I use AI, I feel it's much more conversational. It's for me, this is how it's easier for me to understand something instead of just looking through a document and just reading the document, but like trying to understand, but why have you gone to that place, right? It's a learning tool somehow.
Absolutely, and it's a discovery tool, right?
Yeah.
So in our business, one of our businesses is a aviation data business. So we'll use AI to analyze far more data. It's something that without AI we just wouldn't do. We would need too many people. It wouldn't make commercial sense. So we can use it for discovery of things we wouldn't have ever looked at, right? So that's where I see the real positive use of AI. It's the uncovering of and enabling us to gather more insight and information, not the sort of instead of doing elements of our job for us that actually we should lean into.
Yeah, no, that sounds about right. But I wanted to come back to something you said a little bit earlier in our conversation, and you touched the point of, communities and how important communities are in the landscape. Well, just in general at the moment right now, I feel. So how do you feel are communities like Women in Data important at the moment? What's the role of the collective support and bringing women and women in data or women in tech together?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the first thing is when I talked about being one of few or the only, you have to find your bigger community because you might not find it every day at work. There's plenty around community or having broad networks that challenge your thinking, can give you different ideas, perspectives, can sometimes help you when I think there's a lot of things going on in the world that feel quite overwhelming and you kind of go into freeze mode. So having the people that you can reach out to that can help you in whatever it may be. It might be career advice, it might be signposting you to research or something work related. It might just frankly having having a conversation with somebody saying, am I the only one seeing this? Can I get a different perspective? I mean, we talk about that within inclusion work all the time within work. So it just makes sense you broaden it out to a wider network. And of course, as we've touched on well-being so many times, having community, having friends, like having a network, it's so much better for your mental, physical well-being. Of course it is. The reason being is when you kind of feel like you don't carry problems, burdens, you feel like you're on your own, our bodies don't react well to that. We are by nature social creatures. That's why COVID was especially hard for some people that didn't like the lack of sociability during that period. That is just our nature as human beings. We need physical and social interactions with people. They create much more meaningful relationships.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And the question, am I the only one feeling this or experiencing this, is so... Every time I feel that way and I speak to anyone, everyone has 90% of the people, no, yeah, we've been through it. Everyone's been through it. And it's just the sharing, I think, of experiences is so important. And then, you're also, I guess, learning from their experience. Maybe they reacted in a different way, or they had someone reacting or experiencing in a different way in front of them, and I think it brings learning, it brings visibility to maybe a problem that needs to be solved or something that we can improve or get better at.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I think you can, without good networks, friends, community, you can live in your head a bit too much, right? And our self-talk isn't always helpful for us. And it's, I think, on majority of times, our little voice in our head tells us
Terrible.
It's more like to tell us negative things about ourselves,
Yeah.
right? I just, we all have a slight pessimistic negativity bias. The majority of people do. And then, that can really start to play on how you think and feel in your mindset. And it is, the power of somebody just reaching out going, I've done that, it's fine. Or just keeping grounded to, worrying, I have to do this myself, but, worrying is paying a debt you don't owe. It's very true.
Yeah.
But it's very easy to get locked into that thinking.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the negative self-talk is very toxic sometimes, and someone to pull your head back up is so important. But let's start thinking of more practical takeaways, perhaps. And what are the 2 or 3 things that people that are listening to the podcast can do this week to continue building their success in the workplace today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would, firstly, I quite like thinking about how do I think and feel at moments in the day, right? Who are the people I gravitate towards? Who are my networks? How do I feel in certain meetings and really reflect on that? And one thing I've learned in inclusion work is everything is insight, right? Everything's telling you something about how you work at your best, how you can be at your best. And I think listening to kind of your own well-being and energy levels, and as much as possible, like I know it's a privilege and we can't all work like this, but I try and find when I'm in a really good space for going deep on data, for example, if I'm in that moment and I can do it or I can carve out time to do it, I'm so much better because I can't do that with distractions. I'm quite introverted, so I know I have a limited social battery. So I will try and manage my time accordingly to that. And really, I think a lot of people don't spend enough time thinking about their true strengths and how do they really elevate their strengths and work to their strengths at work. I think we too easily become doers and doing and, get too involved and don't really think about when we're at our best. And I think that's so important. And that's to me as a working mum who doesn't have the ability to work the longest hours, I've really tried to train myself to work smarter, to think about how I can be productive, how I can think about how I can get things done in the best way possible, because I'm not time rich all the time. As I said, I think another practical is look at your company's inclusion strategies, ask some questions. Like I said, it doesn't have to be disruptive questions. I always think you can frame questions in a really positive, but, kind of clear way. What are we doing? And whether that's your line manager, business leader, somebody within human resources. I would also say find some time for you at work. It's not selfish. I'm a big believer in taking time out. I will never do emails when I'm on holiday, for example. My weekends are my own. I have personally contracted to myself about these things because actually it makes me better, and anything that makes you better at work is benefiting the business, right? Doing emails on holiday does not benefit any business. You being rested well and re-energized benefits businesses. So I always think about how you can get that personal self-permission to look after yourself, right? Because that's really important as well, particularly in somewhat turbulent times in any industry where you feel where you are one of less representation.
Yeah, no, that sounds about right. And I understand your limited social battery. I don't know what happened, but since COVID, I don't have any more. My social battery just went way down. It's so sad. But anyways, thank you so much, Jo, for all of those tips and for your time today. But before I let you go, I have 5 quick fire questions just for us to, it's a question, straight answer, and that's all. So tell me, what's the one skill that has been the most valuable in your career?
I would say being neurodivergent. It's not a skill. It is who I am, but leaning into the skill of taking complexity and breaking it down into logical steps and being able to frame things in a very logical, concise, simplified way.
Fabulous. What is the industry trend that you're most excited about and why?
I think having stronger well-being data and us really noticing the link between well-being and performance. So it's not just about looking after your body, or for the enthusiasts, it's actually going to really drive thinking performance.
Still love that. What is the one book or resource every woman in data or in tech should check out?
If you want to laugh, read some Caitlin Moran, How to Be a Woman.
Absolutely. One of my favorites, personal favorites.
If you want to cry, read Laura Bates' Everyday Sexism. And I haven't read it yet, but she's just brought out a book about AI as well. And I believe it's around gender bias in AI. So if you want to cry, we'll do both.
Well, to balance them out. Understood.
Absolutely.
What's your favorite app at the moment?
Yeah, so not the short answer. The shortish answer, I came off Facebook. I cannot be on a platform that, was so anti-LGBTQ and changed its guidance around LGBTQ being a mental illness. That's a red line. So I came off Facebook. I'm probably, 3-4 months in, and I've survived it. I'm actually fine. I was kind of like, the people I know and love in my life, they have my phone number, email. They know how to reach out to me, and I'm on Blue Sky. So I'm no longer on X either. So some choices I made. So my apps are less prevalent, or my social media apps. I've really got into Whatnot, which is really addictive. So if you don't know, it's clothing reselling, but it's live auctions.
Oh,
Yeah, it's quite addictive.
I can see that happening to me.
Yeah, it's the new Vinted. It's clothing resellers, and it's very addictive, and it's real people auctioning things live and doing shows. So check it out. I actually think it's really fun.
Okay, I'll look out for that. And yes, this is also something, it's one of my objectives is to get out of social media and just keep LinkedIn for podcasts, women in data purposes, and for myself. But that's it. I'm with you. And last question, what's your go-to habit when you're working on a challenging project?
I said I was an introvert, so I like to go out and cycle around the woodlands, which is there's beautiful woodlands near where I live. I'm not the world's best athlete, but I like to just sort of take 30, 40 minutes out. Honestly, it is surprising how just doing that, if you've got something you can't think of the solution or you need to do something creative, I genuinely works for me, and just weirdly the solution or different thoughts will just bubble up in my brain.
Yep. I have so many times found a solution to a problem I had when I was walking the dog. So simple.
Because if you're in fear mode or pressure mode or stress mode, nobody makes good choices and decisions, right? That's coming full circle. That's why inclusion, psychological safety is so important. Nobody can do these things on demand. And if you create stress or, pressure points of control, nobody has a good idea in those moments. You really have to think about, when you're going to be at your best.
Absolutely. Jo, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure speaking with you today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Women in Data podcast.
We will be back in a couple of weeks. Until then, we would be very grateful if you could leave us a rating or a review, as it helps us not only to make the podcast more visible, but also to enhance the content.
And if you don't want to miss the next episode, follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We're also on LinkedIn.
Don't forget to register to the Women in Data community. It's free. All you need to do is head to womenindata.co.uk.
Have a great day!